And we're live again here on Google's Hangout service. Michael Martinez of SEO Theory. I am here with Kent Yunk of Roaring Pajamas SEO. If I look a little spaced, it's because we just started the Hangout and then had to cancel it right away. I got all flustered, and so then we had to restart it. So, Kent, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you? That was a fun experience, and it was my fault because I had a phone call, and I've now disabled my phone so that won't happen again.
My phone is not disabled because nobody calls me.
I call you.
Robocallers that try to offer me vacations and business loans and God knows what else they're coming up with.
I don't call. I do call you, and I am none of those things.
Well, I was exaggerating. So other people call me too. Since we're trying to keep this to 30 minutes, let's go ahead. Kent, you wanted to talk about snippet management.
Well, I wanted to talk more specifically about rich snippets. So one of the big challenges and opportunities for people doing SEO is really changing what the format of the search result looks like, and changing it in a format that enhances the clickability, the attractiveness, convinces the user that's searching for a particular keyword to click on your result over someone else's. And so one of the evolving technologies around that is this concept of rich snippets. And rich snippets are really how we use metadata, ideally metadata, to enhance how that listing will show up in a Google search result. So while I'm talking about this, I'm going to use an example that I just pulled. There's a guy by the name of Barry Schwartz who's very well known in the SEO community. He tracks things like Google patents and that sort of thing. And what I've noticed recently is when I see results that he's attached to, I'm beginning to see what we consider to be a rich snippet, or actually, more importantly, what we used to refer to as authorship, which means that the picture of the person that did the post or created the content shows up in the actual Google search snippet. So I'm going to share my screen so that...
So we should point out that Kent is logged into Google. Before we started recording, I confirmed. I logged into Google Plus or Google, and I was able to pull up something like what Kent's about to show you. Okay, here we go.
Okay, so you should be able to see now a couple of search results, both with Barry Schwartz's picture on them, the name of the post that he created, and obviously the link to the actual post itself, and then some information about the actual post, whether it's some metadata, whether it's information about him. It can vary, but this was really interesting because I'm only seeing it for YouTube and for posts for Google Plus. So I think that's a particularly interesting trend, and one that in some ways nullifies what Google was saying originally, and that was that they had discontinued authorship. What it appears to me to be is that they've discontinued authorship that can be enabled by us, and it has allowed authorship for people who are posting actively on Google Plus. So let me turn that off.
Which we could read all sorts of ways, but I think that it means that they're trying to make their own services more attractive, as opposed to letting people. I mean, Google right now is locked in a death struggle for control of the user-generated video market. Most people don't seem to be aware of that, but Facebook is just breathing down their necks, and of course Twitter has Periscope. They're trying to leverage that. Not doing so well, in my opinion. But it's kind of a three-way horse race right now. between those three services. Vimeo and other popular video platforms are still out there, but they're not dominating the discussion the way Google and Facebook are, and Twitter to a lesser extent.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that this authorship thing for people who are plugged in, logged into Google, is probably a subtle competitive move on Google's part.
I would agree with that. And so that's, I mean, I think in the whole spectrum of rich snippets, I think that's a really interesting boon for Google to leverage pictures and rich data around a particular subject for people that are able to see it. And in this case, if you're logged into Google. So the other part of this, well, to talk more about snippets, the idea is that using metadata to improve how your search result looks in a search engine is nothing new. I mean, that's the whole point of doing search engine optimization. It's to take keywords and use those keywords to tune a page to perform better in search. It may be about a subject, but if that subject isn't present in the things like the title and the description and the H1, then it's not going to perform as well, right? So, and some of those things actually get displayed in the snippet. So one example is obviously the page title, how you structure the page title, and what's in the leftmost position has an absolute effect on how a page will rank and how it gets crawled and indexed by Google for a particular subject. And then the meta description, which is metadata, but it's not something that displays on the page, is a great way to tune the description of that search result in such a way as it will allow for a higher click-through rate. Because if you think about it, I mean, in many cases, certainly for keywords and subjects that have a lot of demand, high demand, when those show up, often there's a bunch of ads around them. Now we know that Google is going to remove the ads on the right-hand side, but it used to be that the ads would literally surround the organic results, top, bottom, and side. And those calls to action are by and large have been tested and optimized, and taking the meta description and really making that a compelling description of what's on the page and setting the expectation for the user so that they'll want to click through is a real way of taking advantage of the information that the people that run ads, taking advantage of what they're doing and really leveraging it so that your search result is even better. One rich snippet example that I like to talk about also is the concept of the recipe, right? So if you know anything about schema.org, schema.org is a site and an amount of content around setting standards for how to describe content in the metadata. And so using that rich snippet data, what you're allowed to do is things like doing ratings, for instance. And what I like to do is I like to reference recipe content. So if you go to a Google search result for chicken soup recipe, for instance, what you'll find is a lot of very, very rich search results that include images, they include ratings, they include information about the actual recipe. In some cases, it'll tell you calories, it'll tell you how many people the recipe will serve. I mean, that is really rich. And it isn't necessarily structured that way on the page, but it is structured that way in the metadata. So let me bring up an example of that real quick and share that with our viewers. Let's see.
Well, while Kent's doing that, let me point out something that most people who deal with rich snippets may not be aware of. They do not influence rankings. or if they do influence rankings, they influence them very, very little, because I do a lot of recipe searches for client projects, and the recipe search results often display text-only listings above many rich snippet enhanced listings. So don't assume that rich snippets are just going to magically fix your search results. So go ahead and say something, Ken, so that the people can see the screen.
Yes, so you can see now on the screen a lot of results for chicken soup recipe. Good time to scroll through these chicken soup recipes, because it's one of the best solutions for colds and flus is chicken soup. So in this example right here, from Food Network, you can see an example of chicken soup recipe, Food Network, the URL, an image of the chicken soup made up, and then a 5-star rating. I always love the fact that this is rating 5 with only 2 reviews. So isn't a lot of statistically relevant reviewing going on there, but the one just below it has 4.7 stars with 41 reviews, which makes it a little bit more compelling. Unfortunately, you get a little bit of the description of the recipe, but I don't see in here a lot about the actual ingredients. Some of these do have ingredients. So here, if you look at this top one, you'll see that it actually has calories.
If I can interrupt, sometimes they do put a featured snippet at the top that includes at least part of the recipe. They don't have it on this particular result.
Yeah, this has, you can see some of the instructions, but it has the calorie amount. So I think this is a good example of showing how snippets, and in this case, rich snippets, what makes them rich is the additional content, which is images, star ratings, and other elements such as calories, number of people they serve, and sometimes even ingredients. So let me stop showing that. And I think the point here is that snippets are something that we all want to pay attention to, and really if there's an opportunity for you to build in some rich data into your snippet, you want to take advantage of that. And certainly if you're selling a product, having the opportunity to collect and display ratings is great, especially if your ratings are very, very high. You're certainly going to be in a better position to capture clicks on a page if you have that rich data.
It provides more information to the searcher. Kent and I, a few years ago, attended some sort of a wingding at Google, and we signed non-disclosure agreements that I think have since expired. At any rate, one of the things that they showed us that day, they took us into a room in sort of a focus group kind of a situation, and they went through the recipe algorithm, not the code, but they showed us that they showcased how they were enhancing search results for recipes at the time. This was what, 2011, something like that, I think. Mm-hmm. And so I had been aware of some of the changes in the recipe results anyway, because I have a section on znite.org that deals with white Mexican cheese dip, and I had already seen a lot of what they were trying to show us that day, and they made some interesting comments. Obviously, they couldn't explain everything that was going on behind the scenes, but they said that the rich snippets themselves were not really directly influencing the search results. And I kind of took them to task for that, because when they introduced those rich snippet markups in the search results, my website, which had been listed at like number 2 or number 1 for white Mexican cheese dip and some other queries for years, 5 to 10 years, just dropped, sometimes to the second page. Now it's back on the front page for some of those queries, but I don't use rich snippet markup. And they said, well, it's not the lack of markup that caused your listing to go down. And I think they even pulled up the page and looked at it, and there was a recipe on there and just stuff. There's probably multiple pieces at play here. And I know people have done some correlation studies. Everybody knows how I feel about correlation studies. But some people have done some correlation studies where they've shown that if you've got rich snippet markup, you're more likely to appear highly in the result. There's no cause and effect there. I think what's going on is if you are making the effort to improve your markup here, you're probably doing other things to improve your optimization too. And it's this, you could call it the power of positive thinking, but basically it's compelling you to do everything that you can to compete in that search result. And so just getting your listing there into the search result is not going to be enough in a highly competitive field. When you go and you've got like 6 or 7 other rich snippet listings around you, you want to have as much compelling information there as you can to get that click. Because it does actually alter the ratios of clicks.
Absolutely, it definitely does alter the clickability of your specific result. But again, I think you're right. I think the effect on actual rank position is questionable as to whether or not it improves it or not. Now,
I think there has to be something.
If you add data to the page, right, very specific data to the page, you are increasing the amount of content about it, and maybe you're even providing more relevance in their mind, right?
Yeah, I did redo the cheese dip. It used to be a whole subsite, and I didn't have time to maintain it, so I redid it. It's like 1 or 2 pages now. And I was kind of surprised when it started moving back up onto the front page. Now every time there's a Super Bowl, I get a lot of traffic for white cheese dip recipe queries and things like that. But it's an interesting, the whole recipe space is just kind of fascinating because they will sometimes just put videos in 1 or 2 slots, and everything else is just these full page recipe things. What I'm trying to say is that they're actually doing a pretty good job of filtering out a lot of the crap that a lot of websites publish when they try to move into the recipe space. I mean, videos are useful sometimes. If somebody's going to walk you through cooking something in a 5-minute video, that's a great piece of content to find, really. But I used to see a lot of paginated recipes, and I just hated that stuff. Absolutely hated that stuff. Now what I see are recipes that they're full page entries, and you don't have to click through to get to something. You know, you might have the sales copy or whatever at the top and the recipes at the bottom, but I think the results are much cleaner now, which is why I think that there's other stuff going on in the background too. I don't think it's just the rich snippet markup that is influencing the search results.
Yeah, I mean, so it's funny we're talking about food because, you know, I spent a couple of years at ask.com, and one of the sites we actually built was just around recipes. And
which site was that?
let me see if it comes up.
You don't remember the name of the site?
Well, I think it was ask.com/food.
Oh, okay. I haven't seen that.
But I think having the Hangout up is slowing my browser because it's not.
I won't share the screen. S.com is not food. It's a whole subsite. Wow.
Oh, come on, share your screen. Go ahead,
dude. How do you share screens?
Click on the green screen share, and it'll allow you to just share that one window.
It's not doing anything.
You don't have a pop-up that shows what screens you can share?
Nope.
Okay, here, I think I can do it.
I have no idea what the viewers are going to see.
Yeah, let's see here.
I should point out, it could be that I'm an idiot, folks, but I'm an idiot who's using the new Brave browser. and there may be some incompatibility between Brave and the Google Hangout system. So cut me some slack when you sit there and wonder, why can't the guy share a screen? It could be that Brave is not going to let me do that.
Yeah, it won't come up on my browser for some reason. But
or it could be that Google Hangouts is having a problem today. So.
Well, what was interesting though was to look at the growth, and I did this. I think did I do it on the SEO theory? I showed keyword trending for recipes. So all recipe keywords tend to have seasonality, but if you constrain the keywords to things like turkey, pumpkin pie, and things like phrases like that, what you end up seeing is some very interesting keyword trending over time. And so what we saw was basically, in late September all the way through sort of mid-January, recipes just crushed. They just went up in traffic.
Major holiday traffic. People are planning for big family dinners.
Yeah, they're planning for a lot of things. I mean, it sort of happens as a portion of school, right? People trying to, treat their kids or whatever. And then you see spikes that happen, during the weeks leading up to Thanksgiving and Christmas. And then it surprisingly does not trail off immediately after Christmas. It trails off after New Year's because people celebrate New Year's. And other New Year's celebrations happen, in the weeks after the calendar New Year. So there's some very interesting behavior there. And that was one of the things where we figured, we'll just build this thing and leave it alone. And sure enough, we just threw AdSense on it and watched it make money.
Yeah.
And that all the recipe data, at least the query string, was pulled out of the ask.com query history. So, we used real data, but we cleaned it up and made it more SEO friendly, let's say.
It's good to have your own search engine, isn't it?
It is. Well, that was the only that really, and you think about it, a search engine, that's really all that they actually capture from people, aside from things like IP address and location based stuff, and but the query is the main thing that they capture and can save.
When we were at Quinn Street, the old president of the company, Bronwyn, sent out an email to all points. I'm no longer under non-disclosure, folks. Okay, so she sent out an all points email to all the employees. They had bought, I think it's 2009 or 2010, the Internetcom network, and they didn't know what to do with the domain name Internetcom. And every time somebody mentioned that around me, I thought, my God, that's such a great domain name. I'd make it a search engine. Mm-hmm. And so I sent her this long email explaining, why I think it's be a search engine. Well, of course, Quinn Street does lead generation. Now, how do you do lead generation out of a search engine? And they ended up selling the domain name. I think it was either last year or the year before. I'm almost sure it was last year. So they no longer own the Internet.com domain name. They broke it off from the other properties that they acquired with it. But that would have been, Internet.com would have been a brandable domain name for search. And they could have done what Ask was doing. It's just, Ask used to have its own search engine. Now they're just powered by Google, as are many other secondary search engines out there. And they could have done that. They could have just worked out a deal with Google. They had the money, and they could have put ads on it, and it just would have been phenomenal, in my humble opinion.
Well, and I think the challenge there is, did you ever get a sense for what their data center was like? Because pretty much their whole data center was outsourced, right?
Yeah.
Ask.com did not outsource. They outsourced the backup of their data center, but they have a data center in their headquarters, and it's probably a room that's 40 by 50 or something like that. I mean, it's a big ass room, but it's got extra air conditioning and all of that. But it's big room full of racks. So part of the challenge there is if you're going to do a search engine, you've got to have some major data handling capabilities.
Yeah, and in 2011, that was still a big issue. Today, I'm not so sure because you've got at least 3 major companies, IBM, Amazon, and Google, selling enterprise quality cloud services. I don't know if you can lease an entire data center, but I suppose if you ponied up the money, you know, they'd figure it out for you. And Microsoft. Okay, so there's 4 companies that are competing for that Uber level of data center quality hosting, I guess you could say.
Well, I think it would be interesting to actually, I mean, we're sort of getting off topic, but I think, you know, if you think about the amount of computing power that you need, there might be some offshore companies now that could probably compete very effectively.
Yeah, more than likely. It's certainly a different world now in 2016 than it was when I made that suggestion to Quinn Street. So, you know, I don't want people to go around thinking, oh, Quinn Street made a bad decision. They made a business decision, and there was nothing bad about it. They stayed focused on whatever they wanted to stay focused on, and they did what they could with that property.
Now, I did do some work with Blekko. So Blekko also decided not to do a search engine anymore, but they had a very good search engine for a long time.
And they sold themselves to IBM.
I think, didn't they get acquired? Most of their money now is you know, comes from our friends the Russians.
I thought it was IBM that bought them.
I could be wrong, but I know I don't.
I remember Rich Snippets announcing it, but I don't remember who it was that acquired them.
Well, I just said they had a lot of investment. But anyway, so Yandex did invest heavily in them.
Oh yeah, I remember.
And some of their technology. So, but what they had done was they changed from a search engine to a content site. So what they did was they applied that search technology to create I don't know, aggregated popular culture type content.
Yeah. So if you go to Blekko.com, it says Blekko Technology and team have joined IBM Watson. So I guess when Yandex took a piece of it, it became attractive to IBM. Yeah, maybe there was like a bidding war or something in the background there, or something like that.
Well, and they had some good technology behind it.
They did. I didn't agree with the way Rich Snippets was making all the data available to the SEO community, and he was kind of defensive about that at the time, but eventually they kind of stopped doing that. I don't think the SEO community is really, if you're going to build a huge web presence, I don't think the SEO community is really going to help you that much, to be honest. It just doesn't. I haven't seen anybody leverage that marketplace into something huge. So take that for what it's worth.
Exactly. Well, and I guess we spend a lot of time just talking about how we tune the search results in Google, but maybe in a future discussion we'll talk about how rich snippets change based on search engines. So looking at Baidu and Yandex and some of the other competing multilingual search engines that probably do things a little bit differently.
That'd be a good topic. And we are at around the 30-minute mark too, so I think said all we should say today. I did get last week's video up rather late in the week. I was very bogged down with the client project, so this video probably won't go up for a while, but I'll try and get us back to fairly close to the weekly schedule. So just thanks a lot for watching, people. And again, I'm Michael Martinez with SEO Theory.
And I'm Kent Yunk with Morning Pajamas.
And we hope that you'll tune in again next week. Thanks.
Bye now.